Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining this Aramaic word study where we are continuing in the book of Acts. Last week I laid sort of a groundwork foundation, and again just sent out to just a few who I believe might have some desire in continuing to learn the Syriac Aramaic as I am going through it. Um, I hope that you appreciate it as I appreciate you taking the time to watch this and learn with me. So last week we left off with just our first word. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I hope that you receive the um, PDF file in good order, and hope that you do some experimenting and checking it out and following on the links, because that's really the intent, is to allow you to study and to do your own studying here. I'm going to increase the screen size a little bit more. Last week we talked about katava, which is to write, and the writings versus the scriptures and so forth. I thought that was quite interesting. Um, the next thing that I noticed that was just interesting to me is this word av, or translated as o, and it comes before the word Theophilus. What I found is, why was it necessary to put this interjection in here? I don't recall seeing it very often in the Hebrew Bible. There would be a few times when it was of great importance of God speaking to someone, and so it jumped out at me. I can't find anything written about it, but when I click on the meaning of the word to go and look in Dukrana, it just says "oh" or "oh." I looked it up in Yastros, and it just says that it's an interjection. But I just saw, why was it necessary to get the attention and to point that out? So maybe you'll have an idea. If you get something that makes sense to you or want to share, please feel free to put a note on the YouTube channel, or you can also toss me, those of you that have my email address can toss me a note on that. I just thought it was quite interesting that it comes before what is traditionally thought is the name of the person this is being addressed to. In the English translations, they will have it as Theophilus. We see the phonetic of it, of the Syriac language, is somewhat different. But what is understood is this is a Greek loan word, because theos is the Greek word for God, and philios is one of the words for relationship, sometimes thought of as love, brotherly love. Philios is where we get the name of the city, Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. And so this is definitely a Greek loan word that has found its way into the scriptures. And sometimes you try to look at that as a marker or a trigger to say, okay, is there something I'm supposed to notice here? Is there some significance why this was kept? Some people think it could be a person. Others think it could be just addressed to a group of people that are lovers of God, those that are like-minded. And so I find, the interjection beforehand of "oh, Theophilus" just piques my interest, and I wish I had a understanding of it that gave me some comfort, but I really don't. We know that, or we understand from church tradition, that the book of Acts was written by Luke. You'll find that when you read the Gospel of Luke and then you jump right into the book of Acts, that there is kind of a flow and a connection there. It is thought that Luke was a Gentile, that the Apostle Paul picked up on his journey. You'll find that as we get into the book of Acts, that there is the starting point of the book of Acts starts out in the third person, where it talks in more of a record keeping, that they did this, someone's doing this, but then all of a sudden you'll see that the pronouns change into we. And this is at the point where they felt that Luke joined the missionary party, the ministry party, ministry group, and took over from what Paul had told him and what he had learned from the other apostles, and now was witnessing it firsthand. And we'll point that out when we get to it, but at the pace that we're going, it'll be a long time. So I hope you investigate it on your own and bear with that. So that was an interesting part here. Again, as I'm studying the Syriac language, I hopefully am not leading anyone down a wrong path here as far as the pronunciation goes, as how the vowel pointings go. I had one of the websites that I get my instruction from, in addition to going through the textbook, said that the vowel pointings, as we see these little caricatures on top of the letters, they felt they were of a Western Pashto um, influence, and that the Eastern Pashita uses some other series of dots without the lines. I've looked at them and I thought this was just a little bit clearer to help us to learn and to see the association with the Hebrew vowels. Again, it's more of a learning tool for me. I'm truly not trying to be uh, uh, presenting myself as a scholarly direction in this, but trying to sift my way through it. And unfortunately, from what I'm finding, is the Syriac Aramaic does not have as much study put into it as obviously what the Hebrew does. Doesn't have the history, doesn't have the number of people working to bring things together and coalesce things together. And so it's more fragmented. You find terms like Pashita and Pashito referring to the Eastern and versus the Western documents, the different adherents to either one, the Eastern being the church centered in India, Iraq, and wonderful stories about how they felt they received the gospel preached to them by Thomas and delivered unto them what they felt is the original scriptures in Aramaic, sometimes talked of as Hebrew, but again, you see all these words being tossed around when you do the research. And so I always go forward here with just a bit of caution that it's really tough to make a strong statement about anything here other than, as I'm looking at this, that this is another witness we have that gives us some insight to piggyback onto the Hebrew knowledge that we have to just increase our insight into the New Testament writings. And so I hope you take it as that, and that's really my purpose, is to increase the learning and to see the beauty in this language of what we're going to find out when we get to this next portion here. And that is my main reason for being attracted to the Syriac language and the Aramaic, is that it had the names of God and attributed to God spelled out more clearly than what it does I felt in the Greek. And this is where we're going to see this come up in the first verse here, where it talks about Maran, Yeshua, Mashika. Now, the first thing you're going to notice here is that I did not pronounce it the way maybe everyone else would pronounce it. And that was on purpose. Again, I am just trying to gain the relationship between this. In the Syriac, the yod would be somewhat silent and acquiesce um, to the vowel, and some would pronounce it ishu. Um, I've heard that. I've seen others where they do pronounce the yud and pronounce it in more of a Hebrew fashion, and this would be Yeshu, because of the sere giving that sound of a. So it would be Yeshu. Of course, in the Hebrew, you would see it as Yeshua. I left it as Yeshua because that is my familiarity, and as the association, being an English speaker, having the influence from the King James Version and the Latinized spelling and pronunciation of Jesus being the English for Ishu, Yeshua. And so my purpose here is to try to find a connection back to the Hebrew Bible and make that identification of how this name was given to us, how the name of Yeshua was built off of the known name for God in the Old Testament, and it exemplifies his salvation to mankind. And that's what really my purpose, my interest here in this studying, is to search out those connections. And so also the word Maran here is in English would be Lord. I chose to leave it in the original sound just because of the emphasis, and I felt that in our English teachings, the use of God and Lord have become very sterile and very meaningless. And I like the impact that it leaves me as I see these words in the Aramaic and the Hebrew of Maran being Lord, and doing a study into that. So we're going to click on this link to the Dukrana, and we're going to see something that I hope will pique your interest like it did myself and cause me to start on a study journey that I'm not complete yet. But this word Maran, excuse me, Maran, comes from a association with the word Maria, with the mem, resh, yud, and an ending with an aleph that's sometimes silent, sometimes included, and but it still has the same root as as mar. What I found interesting is when I look into the Dukrana and they start talking about this word, they kind of lump it all together. You'll see here they have Maria, Mara, Mare, and lump them together. And then what I saw even more fascinating is its relationship to the Tetragrammaton, that there's some other sources that I'll bring in a little bit later, but here they lump it all together and they say they're all related, so that when you see the word um, Maran, it is actually making reference to the Yud He Vav He, or the Tetragrammaton, that some people feel is pronounced Yahweh in the Hebrew Bible. So this is where it just gets very exciting for me to see that association, that when we look at Lord uh, in English, sometimes you will see it as capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, which does make reference to the Tetragrammaton or the Yud He Vav He or Yahweh in the Hebrew Bible. But again, that is lost in the Greek translation basis of our English New Testament. And here we see that come out again. We see it come alive, that the Aramaic and Syriac preserves that understanding of who they felt they were talking about, and that they would put the Tetragrammaton in front of the word for Jesus, for the name of Yeshua. And so this is very interesting. Now, this word Maran is not the same as Maria, and we're going to come across that later on, and we'll talk a little bit about it, and I'll share with you some articles I found that were written by people much smarter than I am, and biblical scholars who are investigating this, and they say that Maria is the equivalent of the Tetragrammaton in the Hebrew language. And so as I come across that, I will share that with you. I know I've given you a lot of food for thought here, and I don't want to overwhelm anybody with that, but I want to leave that with you. We'll touch more on it, and I'll share some of that, those writings with you that I've gleaned from some of the sources, and allow you to search through it and seek it on your own. So the Maran, Yeshua, and then of course I kept Mashika or Messiah the same, just for the purpose of emphasis. I don't want it to get lost. I didn't translate it into Christ, which is, the Greek translation of it, because I feel that those words have lost some of their impact on us. And to me, seeing it here and realizing it in the Syriac and then relating it to the Hebrew language just has much more impact. So I'm going to leave that with you. I pray that it encourages you in your studies. Please go to the Dukrana and click these links, read what they have to say, and I hope that you will enjoy this journey onward. We're going on together to just draw closer to the heart of God through His Word, and so appreciate you staying with me. So God bless you all, and we will talk to you again next week.